Okay,
right.
looks good.
Technically, you should be up and running, and Ralph should be good to go.
All right.
So I'm going to go sit back, and Ralph, it's up to you.
Okay. Ralph, you're going to need to speak up because John's a long way away.
He needs to listen to that, Barnard.
It'll get here eventually, just 4 hours earlier.
Okay. Okay. Tonight we're going to talk about the unresolved mystery of Messier 102. And as I said the last time I did this, will the real Messier 102 please stand up? There. Okay. So what we're going to talk about is the mystery. How many people know the history of Messier 102? Anybody?
You found it like 102 into the list, right?
Yeah.
That's what I know.
Yeah.
Richard, you know about the history, don't you? Okay. So
Yeah.
we'll go over some of the history. We'll go over some lost and founds. And we'll talk about you're out of here because that's what a lot of people have done, and we'll talk about why they did it. And then we'll talk about the real story, or my version of the real story. Okay. Okay, so this sort of came up a few years ago when I was doing the articles in the newsletter called Hop to It. And I tried to do the articles in the newsletter at the same time I was doing the Messier program, the observing program. And my goal was to take a group and say every month I did how to find these objects, and then my goal was to find those objects before the newsletter went out, but because of weather, it never happened. But in the process, I got down to Messier 102, and okay, I guess I'm going to point. I was using the Sky and Telescope Messier cards, and when I get to 102, it said duplication of 101. Okay, so when you look at the Messier catalog, are there 109 objects? Are there 110 objects? Because if you're doing a Messier marathon, depending on how far you go back, some of the marathons say 109 objects, some of them say 110. But if you look at the Astronomical League books, it has 102 in there. If you look at Sky Safari has 102 in there. That atlas there, back when I first joined the club, that was the atlas to have. It was like $109 for this big, huge atlas. It has 102. The book that Richard helped me with here, all these have Messier 102 as an object, and it's equal to NGC 5866. So I'm like, okay, what gives? Well, am I supposed to put this in or not? So I got online, did a search, and I found this article online. And you all can look at this. It's a pretty neat article. It's not very long, but this dude went through and did a bunch of research. He's German, I believe, and he was over there and was able to get to the information. And there's a lot of things that he brought up in this article that other people didn't bring up. So I'm sort of using this article as a basis for this. And I did this program similar to this 2018, 2019, but I've actually found some newer stuff, better stuff since then. So everybody knows who Charles Messier was, right? And you know why he did this. You know, he was a comet hunter, and he found these fuzzy objects that looked like comets. So he started making a catalog. So he did 2 catalogs. He did a first edition in 1774, 1 through 45 objects. A lot of those were objects that had been known for years, like Orion Nebula. Okay, Orion Nebula does not look like a comet, right? No way, no way. The Lagoon Nebula, definitely not. Looks like a comet, and it's as large as they are. Even has the Pleiades in there. Pleiades does not look like a comet, but they were objects that had been in other catalogs, and he went ahead and put them in his catalog. So the first edition and the second edition is 1780, that he went on up to 68 objects. Now, he also worked with Messier. I'm going to kill some names here tonight, so just bear with me. He was a friend and a colleague that he met through another astronomer, and Messier worked at the Bureau of Longitude. He was a surveyor and a calculator. So 30 of the objects that are in the Messier catalog were actually found by him. So April 13th, 1781, which they say was a Friday the 13th, Messier was trying to finish his third edition, which is going to bring the objects from 68 all the way up to 100. So he had just finished verifying M98, 99, and 100. So the deadline was there. He had to get the stuff turned in to make the copy of this. And this is the Knowledge of the Times. This is the French Academy. That's what they did. I think it's like every 4 years. So as things happen, like me at work, right as you're ready to finish a project, you always get an email from the sales department or a call saying, hey, can you add this? But I'm just ready to release this project. Sorry, but we need to add it. We told the customer we were going to add this. So, okay. So he gets this email that says, okay, have just found 3 more objects. Can you please verify? So M101,
This is from
1887.
1781.
We got it. So it's AOL.
Yes.
It's official. I mean, right here you can see where
Dial up.
there's where he works.
I've always
There's
thought
his-
Outlook looked like it was from the 1800s.
Basically, this is like Netscape navigating materials on this.
So maybe that's your
So-
voice.
the only of the 3 objects, the only one that he gave a location to is what ended up being M101. In 102, he just said it was nebula between the stars of
So Omicron.
Omicron. There you go. And Iota, Omicron, Boöte, and Omicron in the Dragon. Very faint, near star, 6 magnitude. And then the cluster M103. So Messier, because he had to turn this in, he ended up turning it in and just said, through Mr. Masson, which Messier had not yet observed. So that went into the Knowledge of the Time right here. So that's the only way you do it. Okay, I haven't looked at these. I haven't verified them. And everything that he put in the catalog, he had verified and got a good location on. Well, I'll say good. There are a few objects that he did we'll talk about later on. So that went into the Knowledge of the Time for that year. So about 2 years later, Mr. Masson decided he was writing to Bernoulli of the Prussian Royal Academy in Berlin, who was Johann Bode's boss. Okay. And in this letter, he talked about 2 comets he had found, and he talked about the observation of Uranus that he had done because William Herschel had just discovered Uranus. He talked about a transit of Mercury of November 12, 1782, and some new nebulas that he had found that end up now being 104 through M109. Now, some of those came in from some negative things that happened, but the people that did the negative things did some positive things and said, hey, these should be added to the catalog because he was going to send these and they should be in his catalog. Okay, then at the end of the letter, almost like a PS or an afterthought, he said, I will add that number 101, 102 on page 267 of the Knowledge of the Time of 1784. And notice, you look at it says for 17, if you read some of these, it says 1784, but then when you look at the knowledge of the time, it says 1783, and then when you go back and you research back where he was working on it in 1781 for knowledge of the time was 1784, but then the book is 1783. So I don't know. I've got both dates in there, but he says that they're nothing but the same nebula, which has been taken for 2 by an error of the chart. Okay, remember that, because this is a key thing. Okay, this is 2 years later. So, and there was nothing ever done. We'll go over that in a second. But Johann Bode, he did his own yearbook. So he took that same letter and he translated everything into German. So if you read this, he sort of enhanced, and I think he did, because it doesn't read like the letter does. His yearbook sort of expanded it, reworded it, and it's sort of like, well, it's sort of like Messier screwed up. Now, Bode and Messier were sort of in competition with each other because Bode had started finding his own objects and started his catalog. The reason his catalog didn't go over is because he did equatorial coordinates instead of polar coordinates, and they were real hard to work with, which I had never known anything about until I'll show you later on once I got into the catalogs. He also did not go back and verify. So they gave like M8 to the Lagoon Nebula as an example, because he used observations from other people and didn't verify it. He ended up with Lagoon Nebula in there 3 times in his 1 through 75 objects. So they said, well, that just didn't go over very well with people. Okay, so now from the description of the 2 objects, if you read the descriptions of the 2 objects, even though he says, okay, they're duplication, what he sent Messier, those do not sound like the same object. He said, okay, they're one and the same. I went back and what I thought was a new object was actually the same object that I just viewed, but that's not what you wrote down and not what you sent to me. Okay. So the next thing is, he was actually the editor of the Knowledge of Time from 1785 to 1792, which went through like 1788 and 1794 editions. He never corrected it there. So if it was such a big deal to him, why didn't he correct his mistake when he sent it to Messier? I mean, he was there, he was the editor. He could have gone in and said, hey, this is wrong. Let's correct this now before we send this out. It was never corrected, so all the other editions went through just as they did before. So there's loss. All of a sudden that letter's gone. Nobody knows anything about it. It comes all the way into 1844, and Admiral Smythe is starting. He had just retired from the British Navy, and he had his own observatory, so he started going back and looking at objects and doing his own observing books. And they said that he didn't use an atlas. What he did, he looked at like the Knowledge of Times and looked at the list that everybody else had done, and then he verified those objects, and then he put it in wrote what he saw in his books. So there, he's the first one to question the 2 star locations, the Omicron and Iota. And we'll see why he questions that in just a minute. Because these objects they're separated quite a bit. So Smythe apparently did not know about the letter. He, instead of saying, okay, I think this object should be what ended up being NGC, it was either one of the Herschel numbers, either William Herschel is II 757 or John Herschel's 1910, which ends up now being NGC 5879, which is real close to 5866, but it's not. It's a much fainter object, and they say that Messier probably couldn't see it. Okay, so there's like 60 years later, there it is. Nobody knows about the letter. The letter's gone. The letter's lost, apparently. Anybody recognize this name? If you went to Hal's lecture.
His first teacher of astronomy.
Okay, but what else that Hal brought up that this gentleman,
When he wrote the dictionary of astronomy, or
he tried to hire Dr. Huyer. Remember, he and his wife had their own observatory, and Dr. Huyer visited them, and they tried to hire him to run their observatory. And Hal said, luckily, he said no, and ended up going, and then ended up here. So anyway, Amy, to my daughter, says, okay, his name is pronounced this way. I'm not even going to try it now. Okay. So he ended up finding Messier's original yearbook in a bookstore, and he bought it. So here it is, almost 100 years later. He runs across Messier's book, and he finds it, he buys it, and handwritten in the corner next to 102, he has penciled in a tentative location for 102. So he goes back and he researches it and does this real nice article, which now, because of AI, I've had it translated. Last time I did it, I couldn't translate it. Amy, my daughter, studied French a lot, and she couldn't translate because there's too many technical terms. So he went through and said, okay, here's what Messier thinks it is. So he did his own research, plus the guy at Mount Wilson by the name of Peace did some research, and that was, the sketch there was done by the Earl Lord Ross with his 72-inch telescope. So he was the first one to suggest that maybe the object that should be, that was originally viewed, was actually what is now NGC 5866. But he doesn't know. He said, it could be. He apparently didn't know about the letter either. So here now we're getting into the early 1900s. And the letter still is lost. Okay, in 1947, Helen Hogue came in. She was a Canadian astronomer. She was researching globular clusters, and she was trying to go back and find all the globular clusters that had been cataloged back as far as she could. So she was going through old books. So she comes across the letter. So here the letter's been lost for 100-something years. And she said, here it is. And it states that, it was a duplication. So 102, therefore, should be stricken. Just bam, like that. Okay, it's gone. You're out of here. Bam. Okay.
Like Pluto.
Yeah, like Pluto. Okay. Okay, so there's her article in 1947. Okay, not long after that, Gingrich at Harvard did an article for Sky and Telescope in 1953 and 1960, and he was basically doing the same thing. He was going to doing research on the Messier object. He found the letter through her and basically said the same thing. Okay, because there's insufficient information here to say exactly which object it is, so we can just say, okay, what he said is duplication, M102 doesn't exist. And I hate this because it's Sky and Telescope, and apparently because of those articles, Sky and Telescope made the call that they were not going to, they were just going to say that 102 was a duplication of 101. So all of these that I have from my very first one from way back in the early 70s, there's no indication that there's a 102 at all. That's unfortunate. Okay, then 2005, Stephen James O'Mara, which everybody knows him. I mean, everybody's read his books or his articles. Every time I read this article, I get mad because he made some comments in there that was funny. I was going over this program tonight when I got home from work, and when I was going through the PowerPoint, the AI down on the bottom said, he stated in there that Masson went back to Messier and said, hey, this is duplication. They talked about it, and that's when he wrote the letter to the guy in Germany. There's no, and it said, my AI came up and said, there's no information, nothing that says that they ever talked about the duplication, was basically what it said. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I agree with that. I was going to say that, but I have nothing to back it up because I can't find anything, and there's nothing in the articles that I've read that ever said. In fact, there's very little about any communication between Messier and Masson after 1781, other than there's one rumor that said that Messier helped him, and so he was the editor with the knowledge of the times, that Messier actually helped with it, but there's no direct indication that he did. So O'Mara did this article and just basically blasted M102 out of the water and says, you know, it should be end any association with M102. But in the process, he said there was an error in Messier's star chart. Messier, not Masson, was confused. Okay, I take issue with that. We'll talk about it here in just a minute. There was also an article after that. Mike Cromwell from Atlanta, he worked at University of Georgia in artificial intelligence or something. He did an article and he took sort of a different path, but I chose to leave his article out on this one. Okay, so everything that I've looked, the thing that I key in on, everybody says it's out. He says duplication, and there's always at the end of the letter by an error in the chart. There is nothing that I find other than the article that I showed you at the very front. He said that he went back and he found there was an error on the star chart. So that keyed me in, and if you saw the program before, I showed a picture, and I'll show you even better now because I have better stuff. So I want to look at this. So now for the rest of the story. It'll go. Okay, so what's the deal with, if you look at the location of Omicron and Iota, go to your star charts and you'll see that Omicron in Boges is way down here, and Omicron is way up there. There's over 40 degrees difference. If you've ever star hopped 40 degrees between two stars, that is not a star hop. There is no way you can use that as a star hop. So why did he say that it was between those two stars? Because they're too far apart to star hop. Okay, so we go back and we look, and this is what, while I was looking again this week, I'm thinking, wait a minute. Messier never saw the objects because he says that he never saw it. So any description of the object and its location was not Messier, which O'Mara said, well, Messier said it was here. No, Messier didn't say it. Masson said it. Masson said it looks like this and it's here. And Messier just took that and put it in the book and said, I haven't seen this. I haven't verified it. Ellen Hogue, even at the end of the article, she spells it out and even has the same location in it. Never questioned it. Just says, it's out here. Okay, so what star chart was he talking about? What did they use? And I'm saying probably here because I have no direct evidence other than if you look at the catalogs and you go back through each object, numerous times Messier said according to Glenstead, according or my copy of. So I did a search for that. The same as Hartman did. So here's Library of Congress, and this is new. This is not the one I had before. This is actually new. Library of Congress. This is the atlas, the French atlas that was issued 1776. It says right there on the internet. You can go look at it. Can you see from where you're seeing? Can you see there? You can see it. That's it. Omicron. Oda. That's in the hand of the OTs. Right there. So there's your error. So instead of being there, then theta is Omicron. So it's there. So that was noted incorrectly.
So did you confuse theta with Omicron, like the letters?
The chart is wrong.
The chart was wrong.
Oh.
And see, he called it out. He said because of the error in the chart. But nobody, other than Hartman, nobody ever went back and checked. If you go to chart 7 in the same book that shows all of the OTs, then the error is not there. Because there's theta, there's Omicron down here in this leg where it should be. One thing I want to call out, look at theta. Look at the way theta is drawn. Look at the text and look at Omicron text. Okay, I found another one. This is an auction house that had old books. It's still a 1776 version. They have real nice pictures of it that you can see the same error there. So there's 2 books in the same generation that have the errors. I have one more. I found it, but I didn't take any pictures of it. Didn't take any screenshots. And I have not been able to get back to their website and find it again for some reason. I don't know why. Okay, now here's the one that I had before, only I found better pictures this time. This is at New York City Public Library. They have a copy, but this one was issued in 1795. They also say year 3 of the French Republic. So this is a newer version of the 1776 publication, but it's an update. And notice here, Omicron is now sort of a strange shape because you can look at the theta, look at the text difference, but they've turned that into a theta and corrected it. Also in here, if you look at the other charts, they've actually gone in and added some of Messier's objects, because that's 101 right there. But they corrected it there. So anybody that used that, Smythe or whoever behind that, years later, if they got in your catalog, that would have all been corrected and nobody would know the difference. Okay, so now, Flammarion, if I pronounce that right, said that Messier, and this is a translation, that is not, I didn't write that, that is directly from French to English, the way it translated over. Handwritten, written in pencil in the side, and they said the people that ended up with the manual said they ended up having to take a copy of the manual of the book and darken it, because the pencil over the years had gotten so dim, they had to take the book, put it on a copy machine, copy it so dark that you were seeing the text from behind the page, behind it, to get it to come out well enough that they could actually read it. They pick out the 1781 coordinates of that, which persist up to 2000 on those coordinates. So I took my star chart, you can see my little 8 lines where I drew it in and found where that object should be. And then I also took the French version and put it where he said it should be. Okay, that's not where it is. So now the question is, did Messier later, when he penciled that in, did he go back and try to observe 102 and maybe found it and misread, put the wrong coordinates down, or did he say, okay, it's between? So he said, okay, here are the 2 stars right there in the middle. That's the coordinates. So he picked the coordinates there, and so this is what we don't know. So here we got a little bit closer from where he said that it was to NGC 5866. It's about 20 degrees. No, I'm sorry, 20 minutes or 5 degrees offset. And the blue arrow, other people have said, okay, that star there is the nearest thing to a 6 magnitude that you get, 5.25 magnitude star. So could that be the star that Masson saw the first time? We don't know. Now, I said here that the 20 minutes of 5 degrees, that's within, I hate to say it, within the error that was on some of the objects, because M47 was lost for years. They couldn't find it, and then this guy finally realized that he made a sign error, so he went one direction and said, okay, it's this direction, when it was actually the other direction. So he didn't figure that out until 1959. Okay, so that object was there in the catalog, but they really didn't know where it was. M40, which if you've ever seen M40, it's a double star, and Messier actually noted it as a double star. William Herschel never was able to find it, and that was sort of lost for a number of years. And finally, one of these guys here found it about the same time in the 50s, said, okay, it really is this double star right here. But, so Messier was not perfect. He made some errors. M48 was off as much as 2.5 degrees. M91, he said he offset from M58, but he had actually offset from M89, his previous object, and it was well. M47 was off when Dreher did the NGC catalog, he actually gave it a location for the wrong place, a location for the real place. So it ends up with two, one bad, that there's nothing there, and one good for M47. So there were some errors in there. Even when Messier on Mazan gave the location for M101, he was off three degrees in the original coordinates that he gave Messier to put in the manual. So there's some errors in there. So did he offset the wrong direction? Did he actually see it? Did Mazan, did he see it the first time and said, okay, this is what it is, and it's right here, and then he never was able to go back and find it again, and he just said, okay, I give up, it was duplication of 101. So these things we don't know. But his description of NGC 5866, if you ever look at it, is perfect. If you look at it through the telescope, it is a perfect description of M102. Messier, again, I said, the descriptions that are in there were not his descriptions. They were Mazan's descriptions. And they were perfect for the NGC 5866. Both Messier and Mazan use the same thing, use the same star chart. Mazan stated in the letter, due to a chart error, and didn't specify that it was his fault or Mazan or Messier, even though it was mode implied. The handwritten location for 102, although wrong, was within similar errors that we just looked at. And those objects, even though they were lost, they are now in the manual, in the catalog. So why can't 102 be in there? The Europeans in 102 has been in there for years. Hogue, Genrix, and O'Mara took Mazan's letter at face value and never went any further investigation. But what I found is it's very simple. I mean, there was an error. It's right there. You can now, of course, okay, now we can go online now and find things like that, which they didn't. But the Royal Society has all that stuff. So as far as I'm concerned, in 102, hey, NGC 5866, let's stand up. Anybody have any questions?
What's astronomical you say?
They have it in the manual. It's in the manual. It's 102. It's NGC 5866. The original manual, the one that I started with, is a 1966 version. And even there, they have it in NGC 5866, but they made a statement in there that was incorrect, that Messier had said that it, I forget now how it reads, but the statement they made in the manual was wrong because it wasn't Messier, it was Mazan. If we can even read it on here. Okay. Since Messier himself indicated that the designation was a mistake and that 102 and 101 were really the same objects, they say Messier, but what Messier, so they guess that. So, like that. But if you're doing it according to, I mean, that's the new manual right there in the top that you got a copy of Christmas. I think one that you that got the Christmas present. Yeah.
Oh,
of the observing manual.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so I actually got the Messier objects. We got it for
So
Christmas,
it's in the new manual. And you're supposed to find it. And I did. And even the list that I used that came out of the manual has 102 in there. It's just anything associated with sort of the sky and telescope, really, to be honest with you. I mean, this here I've had for years, the Atlas Deep Sky Splendor by Hans Wernberg. I bought that not long after I joined the club. I mean, this guy did astrophotography way back with a spit camera. You know,
Yeah.
which some of you don't know what a spit camera is, but it was a very difficult because you had to cut the film, and then you had to fold the film around spherical surface. So you deform the film, and then you had to keep everything in the dark, and then you expose it, and you had to cut everything back up again, and then in the dark take the film off and process the film. But he did have a wide field. He had some beautiful pictures for when he was doing it. And he was a German, and they were all black and white at the time. But he indicates that it was NGC 5866. Anybody else?
Just to throw this out here, I wanted to check. So when I've done my last 2 Messier marathons, using ZWO equipment, which is, anyways, you can plug in an M102 and it takes you to M102, but in the catalog, when you actually go through and you can have it annotate things, it doesn't have it as M102, it has an NGC 5866.
Yeah, that's what some of the things I've worked on, like the open cluster. They will say, give you one object, and you go to the ASI Air. It's not there. It's not even in the catalog. Especially planetary nebulas, they're missing tons of planetary nebulas, and you end up having to go in and I would go back to Sky Safari and find the right ascension and declination, and actually go back to the ASI Air and have to plug in the right ascension and declination because they don't have it in their catalog.
So they're using guided telescopes, I guess.
I think I killed it.
Ralph, this is fascinating. I have to think about this a little bit.
Okay, the reason, if you don't know, right now there is a Astronomical League challenge, observing challenge for this summer. It's for the month of June, which the way June's going right now. But they want you to, they give you just a short history of M101, and they want you to either sketch it or image it. So it's open right now if you want to go on the AL website and look if you're interested in it. And they tell you what your requirements are, but you have to do everything in the month of June.
It might be challenging this month.
Yeah,
Go out there tonight.
yeah, it's the same problem we had last year with the Hubble challenge. We had some months that it turned out the months that had the most objects were the worst months we had in the weather. Anybody else?
With some of the errors that they made, like in the degrees of where different objects were, like the errors that they found, could that have been just like over time those objects have moved in the sky a little bit?
Kevin, how can I get out of that? Can I go back to
I don't know.
Somehow I got off of it. When I started looking at it and started thinking about, okay, how can I locate this? The star catalog I use is the jumbo pocket atlas, and it's real easy because 1/4 inch is a degree, so it's really easy to take a ruler. I hate to say ruler or scale. turned it off. I guess it works better when it's on. But when I started looking at the Flimsteed, how do you pronounce it? Notice all these lines? And you have this, and then this grid. There's one grid that starts there, and one grid that starts here at Polaris. It's like, the crap. That's equatorial. So this is off the celestial, off the ecliptic. So that's the pole for the ecliptic. So it's 23 degrees, something like that, off. So this is why Bode's atlas didn't go over, because he used these coordinates to locate everything, where most everybody else is using polar coordinates.
Okay.
So then when you get out here, you have all these, the ecliptic coordinates are dashed, and the polar coordinates are solid. But you get confused out here. And these are every 4 degrees, which is 4 degrees? I thought that was so strange, but it works out. 4 degrees works out pretty good. But then you've got to transfer everything back. So you've got to sit there with the straight edge, and you've got to mark everything. And for me, it was easy because I could do a copy and then just mark up my copy and pick one another.
Well, even with the way that it's typeset and everything,
Yeah.
like that's some of those letters and you know that can make it very confusing.
So the guy in Atlanta said, okay, maybe he was using, he said that he could have, that Messier probably used a hand-drawn star chart, because he did a lot of his comments on hand-drawn star charts. But yeah, that's true, but his star chart, I mean, if you look in the catalog, it says by Flimsteed. It's in there several times. So we pointed it back to that. But still, you know, I don't really want to mark up my catalog to try to find it. And what they were doing, they were actually offsetting from a star. So you would take the star like here and offset back to where M101 was, and say, okay, what is it? William Herschel and Carolyn. Carolyn sat in the room, in the house, with a clock. And so Herschel they would say at a certain star, okay, this star just crossed the center of the field of view at this time. And he would only go 2 degrees above and below, right? Yeah, I think it's 2 degrees above and below of his center line. So he just let everything drift through. And when he would find an object, he would say, okay, it's in the center of the field. He would yell to her and tell her what it was. And she would write it down, that you would look at the clock and take the timing from the clock. So they were taking the time from a known star and waiting when an object came across. She would note the time, and then they could go back and figure out the right ascension from that. So it's the same thing with them. So they're looking at a star, and they're offsetting from that star and saying, okay, that star is a known point, we know where it is. But sometimes you would go positive and it was really negative. That's what happened in 47. He chose wrong. So some people say, okay, did he say, okay, right here, he says it's between, so that's halfway between. That's the nearest I can get to it. I don't know where it is, so I'm going to put a spot right there. Or did he really see it? And when he was trying to figure out where the coordinates were, he cut off a little bit. So they had other errors like that.
The 110,000 thanks to seeing the night sky that Tyler used for his Messier thing, has it pretty easy to find. I found it off of Adastage, just to the side of it. So it's definitely not in. It's definitely in some of the other books that people are using too, like the current guides.
And what they're wanting you to do, and I wanted the picture I took last week, I was wanting to get it in the presentation. I did a wide field, and 5866 is in there, and 5972. And what they're wanting you to do is look at those in a 4-inch telescope, the nearest thing to a 4-inch you can get, because that's what Messier and Masson used, give or take a little bit. The night I tried to do it visually, absolutely nothing. I mean, I could see stars, but you could not see any hint of the galaxy. And how I found it, I logged it, and it's, like you say, it's easy to find.
Yeah,
4-inch with bad seeing, bad transparency, it's hard. So what they're saying is, Smythe said, I think it's 5972, he said, it's probably that. No, it probably wasn't, because, I mean, he was using a 6-inch telescope. They were using a 4-inch. Big difference, light gathering power. So they're saying, don't know why he missed 5866, because it's right there, right next to it.
Still very faint.
Yeah, it's
So binocular 85 millimeter is still really faint, and that was with decent 404 sky. It's like it's
faint.
It's big though. You can see it 23 times magnification. It's about a third of the.
Now, which
width of
one are we
IBIS.
talking about?
102.
102.
It's a lot bigger than it looks.
101 is a lot larger. The problem I've had is it's there, but it's not there. I mean, you'd be looking straight at it. It's like M33, you look straight at it and never see it. We had the Galaxy Challenge 2 or 3 years ago. I looked over the top of M101 in a 12-inch and walked over, and Matt had it in there, and I was looking at the star field. It's the star field, I just saw the 12-inch, and I never saw it. But he had it centered. So
101 felt further away from the guide stars than the chart looked. I had trouble finding it because it was further at a more oblique angle than the chart looked like it was supposed to be.
there's a group of stars that you can follow. You can step through those stars from the star in Ursa Major, I think, the handle. Then you can step, it's curved, and you can step off those stars and go to
Mizar to Alcade to.
something like that. It just, yeah.
I really do like the Messier challenge. It's been a lot more interesting than I thought it was going to be.
Challenging.
Yeah.
I mean, even go to it's challenging. But I saw it was neat. And then in the process of when I did it in 2019, I found one at the Library of Congress. And for some reason, I didn't see those higher resolution pictures. And I took the screenshot and put it in Photoshop and tried to clean it up, sharpen it. And I got it cleaned up, but it looked like Omicron, and it wasn't, because the one I was using, if you remember, the one I was using from New York City was that one. And I didn't see that until I went back and looked at it this time, and there the line was. And I'm thinking, what's that? The hand? Is that the drawing from a finger? Or is that really? And the more I looked at it, the more I read, researched, and found, okay, no, they actually went back in and they changed the text, and that is a bar. It is now. They didn't use the text that had been used before, but it was similar. But now it is a theta, because the Omicron's down in his leg.
It makes it really easy to get lost in translation. That's very, very close. So.